Welcome to Jazz Piano Skills. I'm Dr. Bob Lawrence. It's time to discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Well, it's been a busy month, no doubt about it. We've been hanging out with the primary and altered sounds for G flat, F sharp. And last week we had some fun with George Shearing's Lullaby of Birdland. Now, if you've been faithfully tackling the various patterns that we've been using since the start of the year to improve our hand mobility for improvising, then you're fully aware of the intensity, the perseverance, and determination that's needed to gain a physical command of these skills. So what I always like to do, I like to extend the time that you have with these exercises by taking a week to either interview a special guest or to present a lecture. So today I thought I would do just that, give you all a little extra time to practice the hand mobility exercises for the primary and altered sounds of G flat, F sharp, and present a lecture for the recently launched Jazz Piano Skills lecture series. So today's lecture, you're going to love it. Melodic Minor Modes. Why in the world would I pick melodic minor modes? Well, if I had to pick one topic that is the most poorly taught topic in all of jazz education, of which there are many, it would have to be modes. And because it is so poorly taught, it creates an enormous amount of confusion, frustration, misapplication, stress, and just musical chaos. So today, I thought I would devote a podcast episode to the melodic minor modes. Next month, I'll do the same thing for the harmonic minor modes. But today, melodic minor. My hope is that you will gain a properly ordered understanding of modes, which in turn will lead you to a functional application of the modes. So today you are going to discover the melodic minor modes. You're going to learn how to properly study and apply the melodic minor modes. And you're going to play the various sounds created by the melodic minor modes. So as I always like to say, regardless of where you are in your jazz journey, a beginner, an intermediate player, an advanced player, or even if you are an experienced and seasoned professional, you're going to find this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson exploring the melodic minor modes to be very beneficial. But before we dig in, I want to, as I always do, welcome first-time listeners to Jazz Piano Skills. And if you are a new listener, if you're new to Jazz Piano Skills, the podcast, or Jazz Piano Skills in general, I want to personally invite you to become a Jazz Piano Skills member. And there are various membership plans to choose from. So when you have a moment, check out jazzpianoskills.com to learn more about all of the perks that come along with each membership plan. There are educational weekly podcasts, illustrations, lead sheets, play-alongs. There's a sequential online jazz piano curriculum, which is loaded with comprehensive courses. There's online weekly masterclasses, online interactive fake book. There's a private jazz piano skills community, which hosts a variety of forums. And on top of all that, unlimited private, personal, and professional educational support. Now, all of these perks are waiting for you, wanting to help you discover, learn, and play jazz piano. So when you have a moment, visit jazzpianoskills.com, check out the various membership levels. And of course, if you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, to contact me. I'm always happy to spend some time with you, answer any questions that you may have, and help you determine which membership plan is perfect for you. So visit jazzpianoskills.com and, of course, become a member. Okay, let's discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Let's get after the melodic minor modes. To get a proper understanding of the melodic minor modes, we need to spend a little time discussing the major modes. And to get a proper understanding of the major modes, we need to spend a little time discussing modes generically. What are they? Why are they important? Well, let's begin with the question, what are they? In short, modes are an academic explanation of the origin of pure and altered musical sounds. Major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Now, I want to say that again. Let this sink in. Modes are an academic explanation of the origin of pure and altered musical sounds, which are major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Now, why is it important to know the origin of a musical sound? Well, quite simply, because you want to rest assured that what you are spending time studying, what you are spending time practicing, is valid. You want to know beyond a shadow of a doubt about the significance, the importance, and the validity of any skill within the total landscape of jazz. You want to study and practice real and authentic skills. You want to study and practice real musical sound. Now, let's be honest. How many of you have spent time practicing data with absolutely no idea as to its origin, where it comes from, and if it is legit? In other words, should you really be devoting time, energy, and effort to studying and practicing this information? Blindly studying, blindly practicing information because someone told you to do so is really not a good strategy. And I must say, the qualifications of the individual dishing out the information is irrelevant. Their playing experience, accolades, and or academic achievements are irrelevant. In fact, I know plenty of folks with Grammys and academic degrees that are awful teachers. So what makes a great teacher? Great teachers always substantiate the what, the why, and the how behind all the skills they ask you to study and practice. If they cannot provide the what, why, and how behind the skills that they have asked you to practice, then it's a huge red flag telling you to find a new teacher. The bottom line is this: time is precious, and you do not want to waste it practicing wrong things or practicing right things the wrong way. That will take you nowhere, right? Both scenarios are horrible. So today, I will attempt to provide you with a concise thoroughness about the what, why, and how of mode study and mode practice. Okay, so back to modes being an academic explanation of the origin of pure and altered musical sounds: major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Let's think about this for a minute. Jazz is the study of shapes and sounds. Now, shapes can be harmonic or shapes can be melodic. Regardless of their form, harmonic or melodic, they always produce a sound. A major sound, a dominant sound, a minor sound, half diminished sound, or diminished sound. Modes explain the origin of musical sound, thus validating its authenticity. Again, we want to study and practice authentic jazz sounds. So how do we know a sound is authentic? I'll give you a one-word answer: modes. Now, with all this being said, modes help us organize musical sounds in a couple of different ways. We have pure sounds and we have altered sounds. In addition to being able to organize our sounds by pure and altered, we also can use modes to organize sound types. Sound types being major, minor, dominant, and so on. I want to begin our exploration of modes with the origin of pure sounds. And to do this, we will take a moment to look at the modes of the major scale. Okay, so here is how I imagine the major modes were discovered. Okay, in the beginning, all music was monophony. In other words, the music consisted of a single line of musical tones, and no harmony, just a single line of musical tones. Now, this style of musical composition is best described or best known, right, as the Gregorian chant. It's a perfect example. Now, we've all heard recordings of monks singing Gregorian chant. It's beautiful, and it's monophonic. Now, what happened one day? Now, keep in mind, this is how I imagine music history unfolding. I have absolutely zero proof that it actually happened this way, but this is how I like to think about it. The monks, right, were all gathered together after morning prayer to do a little rehearsing, to do a little singing. And of course, as they were going through their pieces, one monk misread the music. And instead of singing the note C in unison with all of his brothers, he messed up and he sang the note E. So when the ensemble sang what was supposed to be just the single note C, this monk that messed up and sang the note E ended up creating this sound. Harmony. Of course, this was a radical departure from a single note, right? A monophonic melody brought everyone, right? Well, this non-monophonic melody brought everyone to a screeching halt, and all of a sudden silence. The group could not believe what they just heard. What the heck was that? Again, this is my belief of how this all started. At the time, right, they had no idea that they had just discovered polyphony, harmony. What they did, however, discover, what they did hear, was that someone sang a note a third away from where he was supposed to be. In other words, they heard somebody sing a mistake. And to their astonishment, this mistake sounded good. So one very bold monk stepped forward with this radical idea. He said, hey, what if we took every other note of our scale and sang those notes simultaneously, right? So in other words, you sing that note, you sing that note, you sing that note, right? And they went every other note of the scale. Wow. They all looked at each other with amazement. What a radical idea, but wow. Man, does that sound good? Now, the radical ideas just kept coming. Another monk stepped forward and said, hey, wait. If we can take every other note of the scale, starting on the root of the note, and form this amazing sound, why can't we start on the second note of the scale, the note D, right? And go every other note as well. So D, F, A, C. Wow. Now they were really amazed. They had two harmonic shapes, two very different sounds. So, to determine the difference between these two harmonic shapes, because they heard the difference, they had these two different sounds. How were they going to come up with an explanation? So what they did was they counted the distance between each note of the harmonic shape. They discovered that the first shape had 4 half steps between the root and the third, between the C and the E, and 3 half steps between the third and the fifth, the E and the G, and 4 more half steps between the fifth and the seventh, the G and the B. Now the second harmonic shape they discovered was the opposite. It had 3 half steps between the root and the third, the D and the F, and it had 4 half steps between the third and the fifth, between the F and the A, and 3 more half steps between the fifth and the seventh, the A and the C. Wow. Now what? Well, another monk spoke up and said, we need to name these harmonic shapes. So they took a vote. All in favor of calling the first shape major. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. Well, needless to say, they approved it. That first formula of 4 half steps with 3 half steps, followed by 4 half steps, from that moment on is going to be called a major sound. Then somebody said, well, wait a minute. What if we call the second one, instead of major, why don't we call the second one minor? All in favor? Aye? Nays? Well, we know the answer, right? They voted it in. So from that moment on, every sound that had 3 half steps from the root to the third, 4 half steps from the third to the fifth, and 3 more half steps from the fifth to the seventh, from that day forward, minor sound. But the monks didn't stop there, right? If we can produce these harmonic shapes off the first note of the scale, off the C, and we can produce the harmonic shape off the second note, we should be able to do that on every note of the scale, off of every note. And they did. E minor, F major, they got the G dominant, I'll explain that in a minute, A minor, and B half diminished. So 7 harmonic shapes. The dominant and the half diminished was again just a combination of half steps. The G to B, right? They discovered they had 4 half steps between the root and third, 3 half steps between the third and the fifth, and 3 half steps between the fifth and the seventh. The half diminished sound, they discovered had 3 half steps between the root and third, 3 half steps between the third and the fifth, and 4 half steps between the fifth and the seventh. So they just did the math, they came up with the labels, and we have the pure sounds of music: major, dominant, minor, and half diminished. Now, once again, I just want to stress that this historical event, again, completely imagined by me. There's no historical proof whatsoever, right? This historical event gave birth to the major modes and the primary sounds. But guess what the major modes did not give us? The major modes did not give us the diminished sound or any of the altered sounds that we hear in music. So this begs the simple question. If the diminished sound and the altered sounds do not come from the major scales, then where do they come from? Well, if they do not come from the major scales, logic tells us they must come from the minor scales. The harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scales. And indeed they do. And indeed we will look at both. Today we're focusing on the melodic minor sounds. Next month we'll take a look at the harmonic minor sounds. So before we go any further, before we dig into the melodic minor modes, I want you to hit the pause button. Take a few minutes right now to download and print your podcast packets. I don't usually put together podcast packets for the lecture series, but today because of our discussion of the melodic minor modes, I thought having this information in your hands would be very beneficial, be very nice. So I want you to take a moment right now. And if you are a Jazz Piano Skills Ensemble member, again, your membership grants you access to all educational podcast packets, the illustrations, the lead sheets, and the play-alongs for every weekly podcast episode. And as I mentioned every week, you should have these podcast packets in your hands when listening to the episode. And of course, you should have them sitting on your piano when practicing as well. Now, if you are listening to this podcast on any of the popular podcast directories, such as Apple or Google, Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, the list literally goes on forever, then I would strongly recommend just going directly to jazzpianoskillspodcast.com. Again, that's jazzpianoskillspodcast.com to access and to download your podcast packets. And you will find the active download links in the show notes. Okay, one final but very significant message here. If you are listening and if you are thinking that the various skills that we are about to tackle, these melodic minor modes, if you're thinking these modes are way, way over your head, then I would say to you, no, they're not. No worries. Simply listen, right? Sit back, listen, and grow your jazz piano skills intellectually by just simply listening. That's it. Every new skill is technically over our heads when first introduced, but this is how we get better, right? We place ourselves right in the middle of conversations where we are lost. We're hearing words we've never heard. We're hearing comments or concepts that we've never heard of before, right? But this is how we grow. We are forced to grow intellectually. And I say it all the time, right? All musical growth begins upstairs, mentally, conceptually, before it can come out downstairs physically in your hands. So I want you to just sit back. I want you to relax. I want you to listen to this podcast lesson now to discover and learn. The play, as it always does, will come in time. I guarantee it. Okay, now that you have your podcast packets in front of you, I want you to grab lead sheet 1, skill 1, which deals with the C melodic minor scale and its modes. And I want you to grab illustration 1, which deals with all of the altered C sounds produced by the melodic minor scales. So when you have both lead sheet and illustrations 1, lead sheet 1 and illustration 1 side by side, you have a scale perspective, modes on one side, and you have a sound perspective, chords, on the other side. So let's look at lead sheet 1 first, the scale perspective, the modes. Oh, but before we do that, you'll see that in both of your packets, right? You have the melodic minor modes laid out for you for all 12 melodic minor scales and their modes. And you also have the altered sounds grouped by each note, right? Well, I should say you have worksheets to think through each of the notes, the melodic, the sounds for each that are produced by the melodic minor scale. So these are invaluable tools. They're all laid out for you that you have everything that you need to do a very deep dive into these melodic minor modes and the sounds that are produced by the melodic minor scale. So, okay. So now we are back to looking at lead sheet 1, the scale perspective, modes. Okay, so the very first thing I want to say about the melodic minor scale, the easiest way to think about the melodic minor scale is that it's just simply the major scale with the third lowered 1/2 step or a flat third. So instead of the C major scale being C, D, E, F, G, A, B, the melodic minor scale is going to be C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B. So you get this sound. Okay. So look at lead sheet 1, the very first mode, if you will, letter A. you'll see the sound that is produced is notated there as a C minor major 7. So it's this sound. Beautiful sound. It's a beautiful chord. It's a kind of a hybrid, if you will, right? It's a minor on the bottom with major on the top, a minor third with a major 7. The scale, if I play the scale with that, you see that chord, the root, third, that lowered, that E flat, the 5th and the 7th. So there it is, inside the scale. So the very first sound produced by the melodic minor mode, or the melodic minor scale, I should say, mode 1 is the C minor major 7 sound. Okay, so now letter B. You'll see D minor 7. Nothing fancy, nothing unordinary about that, right? However, it's a minor 7. You'll see in parentheses there I have notated Dorian flat 2 is the mode name. Dorian flat 2. So it's like the Dorian scale, but we have that E flat coming from the melodic minor scale, right? So now we have, instead of a Dorian minor, which would be, we have the flat 2 in here. Let me play that again. Now, the question always comes up, will I ever use that mode? You can. You can. It's very rare. In fact, I would be treating that E flat more of like a neighboring tone or a passing tone. But you certainly could. Is it as common as Dorian? Heck no, not even close. But there's no reason, depending on the sound, depending on the circumstances or situation, that may be a great mode, right? So I certainly wouldn't throw it out. You need to be aware of it. And I certainly would practice it, right? And I have practiced it. But certainly it does not warrant as frequent use as the Dorian mode. Okay, so now let's look at letter C. Now, we run across this sound all the time, right? Here we have a major 7, sharp 5. So you'll see notated on your lead sheet, E flat major 7, sharp 5. And again, if we play the scale, I'm going to play that sound. So there's my E flat major, sharp 5. And now I'm going to play the mode. I'm going to play the C melodic minor scale starting on that E flat. And sure enough, if you look at that mode carefully, you see that chord, the E flat, the G, B natural, which is the sharp 5 in relationship to E flat, and then the D, which is the 7th. So it's a pretty sound, and used in music all the time, right? You're going to come across major sharp 5 sound, right? You're going to have something to play. You have to have something in your arsenal. This is a great mode, okay? So I would definitely practice my E flat major sharp 5 sound. Now, letter D. Here's one of the altered dominant sounds that we've been dealing with since the beginning of the year with all of our altered fingering exercises. Letter D, we have an F dominant 7 sharp 11. F dominant 7 sharp 11. And if we play the melodic minor scale, starting on the note, the C melodic minor scale, starting on the note F, we have our dominant sound, and we have the sharp 11 sound with that B natural, right? A pure 11 sound would be the B flat. But when we look at this melodic minor scale and the modes, we discover an altered dominant sound, sharp 11. So we get this. Wow. We've been playing that all year, right? Since the beginning of the year. And here it is. Here's where it comes from. Now you know its origin. So when I've been asking you to play F7 sharp 11, I'm not just pulling that out of the hat. I'm pulling that right from the melodic minor scale, its origin, proving its authenticity, that you should indeed give this sound some serious attention because it is laced throughout the jazz literature. And the very same thing can be said about letter E, the G7 flat 13 sound, right? Mixolydian flat 6. Right, so in the parentheses there, I have the mode, the proper mode name for each one of these, right? So minor sharp 7, we have the Dorian flat 2, Lydian augmented, Lydian flat 7, and now we have the Mixolydian flat 6. And this is the G dominant 7 flat 13. So we have our G dominant chord. I play the melodic minor, C melodic minor scale starting on G. There's my flat 13. Right? Again, we've been dealing with this sound since the beginning of the year and practicing various finger patterns that address this sound specifically, as well as the F7 sharp 11 that we just looked at. So again, very valid altered sounds. You now know the origin of these sounds. Again, I'm not pulling them out of the hat. The authenticity of these sounds has been validated through the examination of these modes, the melodic minor modes, which means that you should indeed be practicing these sounds. Okay, so now let's take a look at letter F, and you'll see there the chord symbol is A half diminished 7, or Locrian flat 2. So if I play my A half diminished sound and I play the C melodic minor scale starting on the note A, I end up with this. Well, it fits like a glove, right? It does indeed. Outline that A half diminished 7 sound. Again, very valid mode, and one that I would recommend practicing and using. All right, so now we get to letter G, and this is the big dog right here, right? This is our B7 fully altered sound, which gives us our flat 9, sharp 9, our flat 5, and sharp 5 sound. The mode name, Super Locrian. Okay, Super Locrian. So if I play my B7, right, and I'm going to leave out the 5th. I'm going to play the root, 3rd, 7. B7, and I play my C melodic minor scales starting from the note B. So looking at your lead sheet there, right? B obviously is the root, the C natural, flat 9, the D natural, sharp 9. The E flat gives us our 3rd for B dominant 7. The 3rd is D sharp, right? But we've lowered the 4th a half step there, which gives us, orally, it gives us our 3rd. Then we have an F natural, which is the flat 5. We have the G natural, which is the sharp 5, and then the note A, which is the 7th of B dominant 7. So obviously, we've dealt with this altered dominant sound since the beginning of the year as well, right? So when you look at the C melodic minor scale, you see right away there are 3 altered dominant sounds produced by the melodic minor scale. We have the sharp 11 sound, we have the flat 13 sound, and we have the fully altered sound. We also have a major sharp 5 sound that is produced and very handy to know, coming from our melodic minor scale. And we also have a minor sound, a half diminished sound, and then we have that hybrid. The very first sound that we dealt with today was that C minor major 7. Now, the best advice I can give you when studying and practicing the melodic minor modes, right? Again, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, modes are an academic explanation of the origin of pure and altered sounds. Okay, so when studying the modes, the melodic minor modes, they're introducing you to authentic jazz sounds. Once you understand the logic behind the mode, and once you start getting your hands and your ears wrapped around the sound, then just practice the sound and focus on the shapes and the sounds. You do not need to focus on all the academic names. And in fact, I have to stop and think about them when asked, right? Because they are the furthest thing from my mind when playing. Again, modes are an academic explanation of the sound, origin of sound, which validates its authenticity so that you know you're practicing the right kind of material. Okay? All right. Now that we have unwrapped the modes of the C melodic minor scale and the 7 sounds produced by each mode, now let's look at the 7 sounds in relationship to the note C. In other words, the 7 C sounds produced by the melodic minor scales, right? In other words, if you took all 12 melodic minor scales and you laid them out side by side and you took a yellow highlighter and you highlighted all the C sounds, you'd come up with 7. So now let's take a look at those 7. And to help us do that, I want you to grab the very first page out of your illustrations packet, And it's titled Melodic Minor Modes. You'll see that the subtitle is C Sounds, Melodic Minor. And I said, write in each melodic minor scale to create the correct sound. Now, I've done this for you for the C sounds. For the other 11, that's you. That's totally on you. So this is a model that I want you to use to help you think through the other 11 sounds, the F sounds, the B flat sounds, E flat sounds, and so on. So if you look at the very first sound, C minor major 7, we've already dealt with that, right? And right underneath it, you can see that I have it labeled coming from the C melodic minor scale. Okay, then off to the right, I literally have that scale spelt out. C, D, E flat, F, G, A, and B. In orange, I have the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th of that sound highlighted or illuminated using the color orange. Okay? Now, the second sound, C minor 7, coming from the B flat melodic minor scale. And if you look at what I have written there to the side, you'll see that the scale is spelled C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. So this is the B flat melodic minor scale starting on the note C. Notice that the D, the 2 is flat. So that's where, if you look back on your lead sheet, scale 1, the Dorian flat 2, there's your flat 2, right? Produced by the B flat melodic minor scale. The third C sound, C major 7 sharp 5, coming from the A melodic minor scale. So what you have on the right-hand side of this illustration is the A melodic minor scale spelled out, starting on the note C, of course, right? So you see there we have a C, E, G sharp, B illuminated in orange, which clearly shows you the C major sharp 5 sound. Okay, number 4, C7 sharp 11. This sound is generated by the G melodic minor mode. So on the right-hand side, you'll see that this is the G melodic minor scale, starting on the note C. And look at it, looks just like a C dominant scale, a C dominant sound, C, E, G, B flat. But you see the F sharp there in the spelling? There's our sharp 11. And this is what I was talking about earlier. When I play that sound, when I play that scale, I think of it as the C dominant sharp 11 sound. I'm not thinking of it as the G melodic minor scale starting on the note C. Again, this is just validating why we spend time dealing with this sound, because it is an authentic jazz sound produced by the melodic minor scale. Okay, number 5, C7 flat 13. This sound is generated by the F melodic minor scale. So if you look to the right, we have the F melodic minor scale spelled out starting on the note C. But just look at the illumination of the root third, 5, and 7. We clearly have a C dominant 7, C, E, G, B flat. Look at the 6, which is A, but you'll see that it's A flat, which is the flat 13 sound. It's fantastic, right? It makes sense. Now, number 6, C minor 7, flat 5, or the C half diminished sound, coming from the E flat melodic minor scale. So, on the right-hand side, once again, we're going to spell the E flat melodic minor scale starting on the note C. But look at the root, third, fifth, and seventh that's illuminated using the color orange. You clearly see that we have a C half diminished chord. Very nice. And then our last sound, right? The C7 alt, which is the fully altered sound with the flat 9, sharp 9, flat 5, sharp 5, coming from the D flat melodic minor scale. So if we spell the the D flat melodic minor scale starting on the note C, right? C, D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat. We have this beautiful altered sound, fully altered sound. So if you'll notice that the letters that I have illuminated in orange, I have the root, I have the third, which is the F flat, and I have the 7th, which is B flat. The D flat is the flat 9, the E flat, the sharp 9, the G flat, the flat 5, and the A flat, the sharp 5. Okay? So, what a great chart, what a great diagram to use when practicing these sounds to help kickstart you, to help you start to get these sounds in your ears and under your fingers. What a great exercise for you to use these illustrations to help fill in and think through the 7 sounds for each of the remaining 11 notes, right? So between the illustration worksheets and templates, and then you have your lead sheets packet, which have the melodic minor scales laid out for all 12. You have an arsenal at your fingertips that will help you to begin digesting and gaining a command of these essential jazz sounds. Wow. Whew. That's a lot of information in a very short period of time. As always, right? We've unpacked an incredible amount of information in one very short, very fast hour. Now, do not let the melodic minor modes intimidate you in any way. Because again, the modes are not an improvisational approach. They are not a method. Again, they are an academic explanation of the origin of pure and altered sounds to validate the authenticity of that sound so that you can feel good that you're spending your time wisely practicing the sounds, the shapes and sounds of jazz. All right? So once you actually think through these scales and the chords that are produced by these scales, these modes, and use the worksheets and the illustrations and the lead sheets that I've provided for you, once you can experience that tipping point where you actually shift from most of the emphasis being placed on the academic explanation, and the tipping point takes place to where you actually now just focus on playing the shapes and the sounds. Wow, that is a great transition. I promise you that will happen. And the sooner that you can get to that, the better. So it's kind of like the modes help us get to the data that we need to get to. And then you can throw those crutches away because now you're standing on your own 2 feet and you're playing these sounds, these shapes and sounds with ease. okay? So again, do not let these melodic minor modes, or when we deal with the harmonic minor modes, or even the major modes, do not let them intimidate you in any way, shape, or form. Most of all, too, right? Most of all, be patient, right? Developing mature professional jazz piano skills, which mode study is a part of, just be patient and begin structuring your study and practicing after the demonstrations that I've walked you through here today with the lead sheets and the illustrations. And I promise you will begin to see and feel and hear your progress. There's just absolutely no doubt about it. Well, I hope that you have found this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson that's part of the Jazz Piano Skills lecture series, exploring the melodic minor modes, to be insightful and to be beneficial. And don't forget, if you are a Jazz Piano Skills Ensemble member, I will see you online Thursday evening at the Jazz Piano Skills Masterclass, which will be held at 8 p.m. Central Time, to discuss this podcast episode lesson, exploring the melodic minor modes in greater detail, and of course, to answer any questions that you may have about the study of jazz in general. If you have any questions before then, you can always reach me by phone. My office number here at the Dallas School of Music is 972-380-8050. My office extension is 211. If you prefer email, my email address is drlawrence, at jazzpianoskills.com. Or you can use the nifty little SpeakPipe widget that is literally nestled in on every web page of the Jazz Piano Skills website to reach out to me that way. Well, there is my cue. That's it for now. And until next week, enjoy the melodic minor modes. Do not be intimidated. And most of all, have fun as you discover, learn, and play jazz piano.